She made a $3 million mistake the moment she stepped into my backyard. I came home expecting silence and found the HOA president standing on my grass with 3 contractors' orange paint sprayed across my lawn, a survey tripod near my fence, and a shovel already in my flower bed, like she thought she was cutting a ribbon on land she didn't own. What Karen Delacroix didn't know was that my cameras had been recording for weeks, and the sentence she said next was about to burn her whole little empire to the ground. My name is Daniel Marsh. I'm 51 and I've spent the last 15 years in federal infrastructure compliance. In plain English, I deal with easements, property lines, and the kind of disputes that turn neighbors into amateur dictators. My family has owned those 3 acres since 1963, long before the subdivision next door, long before the HOA. My grandfather built the fence himself, kept every deed and survey in a fireproof box, and taught me one thing I never forgot. Land means something because it has a line, and if you let people blur that line, they'll take more than you think. Then the farmland east of me turned into a subdivision with a park and an HOA. The first board was fine. Then Karen got elected president, and suddenly the whole place felt like a little kingdom run by a woman with a clipboard and a control problem. My land sat between the HOA park and the main road. One Saturday morning, Karen came to my door smiling like we were about to agree on something. She told me the HOA wanted to build a paved walking path along the east side of my property, just a small strip, 6 feet wide, good for the community, good for property values, good for everyone except the man losing the land. I told her no, calm, clear, final. This was private property, not part of the HOA, and there was no access easement because there had never been one. Her smile twitched. She nodded and walked away. I knew right then she wasn't done. The letters began 2 weeks later. First, my fence was allegedly blocking a shared pathway. Then my garden supposedly violated neighborhood standards, which was funny because I didn't live in her neighborhood. Then came the one that mattered. The HOA was exploring legal options to ensure fair community access to adjacent land. That kind of language isn't law, it's intimidation, dressed up in legal clothes. So I didn't respond. I filed every letter, dated every envelope, and let Karen keep talking. Meanwhile, a neighbor named Tom started telling me what she was saying at HOA meetings. Karen was claiming my property had a historical community access easement. She was telling people I had fenced off land that had always belonged to the neighborhood. Bit by bit, the story spread. Folks who used to wave stopped looking at me. Somebody left a note on my windshield that said, "Stop being difficult, it's just a path." That was when I knew this wasn't a disagreement anymore, it was a campaign. Then Tom told me about the map. Karen had shown homeowners a printed plan with a dotted line running right through my property labeled Historical Community Access Easement. So the next morning, I drove to the county recorder's office and pulled every document tied to my parcel. Nothing. No easement, no shared access, no legal claim of any kind. Karen's map was fiction, and that was the moment I understood where this was heading. She was building cover so she could act first and force me to clean up the mess later. So I got ready. I bought 4 small security cameras with cash, checked the law with a lawyer friend, and mounted them under my eaves and near the gate. Then I waited. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. Anybody else might have relaxed. I didn't. Silence after pressure usually means preparation. Then on a Wednesday afternoon, my meeting got canceled and I headed home early. I turned onto my street at 2:47 and saw 3 trucks parked in front of my house. Before I even shut off the engine, my phone buzzed motion alert camera. 2, recording in progress. I looked toward the backyard and there she was. Karen standing in the middle of my yard with 3 contractors and a man holding a folder. Orange paint cut across my grass. One guy had a tape measure running from my deck to the fence. Another had a shovel in the dirt by the flower bed. I stayed in the truck and opened the live feed. The audio was perfect. Karen pointed across my yard and said, "Once the fence comes down the path, we'll run 6 feet wide and connect the park directly to Maple." Then one of the contractors asked the question that saved me months of legal work. The homeowner signed off on this right. Karen didn't hesitate. The HOA controls the access easement. It's already in the development plan. There was no easement. I had the county records to prove it. She had just lied on camera on my property while authorizing people to tear down my fence. I let them talk another minute, then I got out, walked around the house, and stopped about 10 feet behind her. "You want to tell me what you're doing on my property?" Everything froze. Karen spun around so fast she almost dropped her clipboard. For one honest second, I saw surprise, then recognition, then fear. But Karen recovered fast. Said they were conducting a routine survey for the community walking path. I told her there was no community walking path, this was private property, and she was trespassing. She tried the easement lie again. I asked her once to leave. She refused. So I called the sheriff. The deputy showed up in about 15 minutes. Karen handed him the fake map and started talking about an HOA-authorized improvement on a community access easement. I handed him my deed, my recorded survey, and the county boundary certification. He compared the papers, looked at Karen, and asked the only question that mattered. "Do you have a recorded easement filed with the county?" Karen stalled. The man with the folder tried to talk about development plans. The deputy cut him off and asked again. No answer. Then I told him I had security footage. The deputy watched the playback right there in the yard. The orange paint, the measuring tape, the shovel in the flower bed, the contractor asking whether I had signed off. Karen saying the HOA controlled the easement. He watched that part twice. Then he turned to the contractors and said, "Pack up your equipment, you're done here." They moved fast, didn't argue. The deputy warned Karen not to return without written permission or she'd be arrested for trespassing. Most people would think that should have ended it. It didn't. It started the real collapse. The next morning, I took every letter, every county record, and every second of footage to a property litigation attorney named David Herrera. He watched the video 3 times, leaned back and said, "She didn't just trespass, she committed fraud." That was the twist Karen never saw coming. She had signed a construction contract as HOA president authorizing work on my parcel, described it as an approved project on an existing easement, and used HOA money to do it. Except the HOA had no easement, no right to my land, and no legal approval for the project. We filed suit by Friday: trespass, property damage, fraudulent misrepresentation, misuse of HOA funds, reputational harm from the smear campaign. And David sent a copy straight to the HOA's insurance carrier. Insurance companies will tolerate mistakes. They do not like fraud. Within days, the carrier demanded contracts and county filings. They found exactly what I already knew: no easement, no legal basis, no coverage. That letter hit like a bomb. Tom went to the emergency HOA meeting and called me afterward. Over 200 homeowners packed the room. Karen tried to frame the lawsuit as a misunderstanding. Then a board member named Phil asked whether she had signed a construction contract for land that didn't belong to the HOA. The room went dead silent. Karen stumbled. Phil said he had checked the county records himself. No easement. Never had been. Then he read part of the insurance letter out loud. People started shouting. $14,000 had already gone to contractors, and more unauthorized spending started coming out. Karen was suspended that night and resigned within a week. The contractors sued, too. The new interim board president, Gerald, reached out and met me at a coffee shop. He told the truth plainly. The HOA had been wrong. They would reroute the path entirely on HOA land. Pay my legal fees, cover the damage issue, a written apology, and amend the bylaws so no project involving land outside the HOA boundary could even be discussed without a 2/3 homeowner vote. I said yes because by then the fight wasn't about revenge, it was about the line. And that's the part that stayed with me after all the shouting stopped. People think power belongs to the loudest person, the one with the title, the polished smile, the fake confidence. It doesn't. Real power is truth you can prove. It's paperwork, patience, and the discipline not to panic while somebody else is digging their own grave. My grandfather knew that before I did. Land isn't just dirt. It's a promise passed from one set of hands to the next. 6 months later, I stood in my backyard on a quiet Sunday morning with a cup of coffee. The orange paint was gone. The grass had grown back thick. The fence still stood exactly where it always had. Off to the east, the new walking path curved neatly around my property, paved and clean, not touching a single inch of my land. A woman pushed a stroller down it while her kid rode ahead on a bike. They waved. I waved back. That felt better than the lawsuit, better than the meeting, better than watching Karen disappear. Because the real victory wasn't crushing her. It was holding the line. Karen moved out 4 months after she resigned. The HOA paid the settlement, issued the apology, changed the bylaws, and learned the hard way that confidence is not consent and a title is not ownership. My cameras are still up, by the way. So let me ask you this. When somebody in power crosses a line and calls it progress, how far should a person go to push back? And if you've ever had an a neighbor or anybody else try to take more than they had a right to, drop your story in the comments. I want to hear where you drew the line and whether you think Karen got exactly what she deserved.